Hi, welcome to this session, and in this session we are going to be looking at semantic and non-semantic elements in HTML. And when we talk about semantic elements in HTML, they are simply HTML tags that provide meaning to the content of a particular web page. So don't forget that your web page is always divided into different sections, and each sections you can just name it at random, but most of the time it's always advisable for you to encamp each of the content or each of the subdivision of the content or each of the components of the content into under you should camp it under a particular parent that will define what that section or component is actually doing, and this helps search engines and web developers to understand the structure of a web page, like not just you, the search engine also understand, okay, this part of my article, this part of my web page is actually the header, this part of my web page is actually a navigation bar, this part of my web page is actually the section, this part of my web page actually has to do with article, and this part is the aside, maybe the sidebar or the navigation bar, and also we also have the footer of two. It's just like dividing your web page into different sections. So when we talk about semantic elements is just this header, nav, section, article, aside, footer. Majorly they don't have any specific function, just that it's just a way of using defining what each part of your web page is actually doing. And also the non-semantic are the one that does just like a container. They does not really specify what the section or the part of the web page is doing, and we are going to be looking at that in this session. Now let's look at it in action. So just the summary of this, what we are going to be looking at is, you can see it with this diagram. So now let's go now and let's start with the header. So this header is just, okay, this part of my web page is actually the header section, and header is an example of a semantic tag. So inside my header, let's say I want to welcome my user, welcome to my web page, welcome to my web page. So now that's my header, so I want that to be my header. So let me make it to be maybe h4 so that it will be smaller compared to what we're actually dealing with in this session. So this is my, so now that is the header. So inside my header I also want to have my navigation bar. So this navigation bar too is also another example of semantic tag. So I will have my nav, which is not really doing any specific thing, just to make us understand what we are doing at that session. So inside that semantic tag, that's when you now define the content uh, of what you are trying to do with that session. So let's in this navigation bar we are going to be having our unordered list, which is going to be styled to make up our, so on another list we are going to be having a list item here. So in that we are going to be having a link tag where we are going to be taking the href, and let's just say this is just going, so we close that tag and we specify that this should be our home. So don't forget, this is our navigation bar. We are using this to mimic our navigation bar. So I duplicate this. So let's say our about page, and let's say our contact page. So and so you can see an example of semantic tag is header. It does not really have anything it's doing, but just to let us understand what we are doing at that point. And that example is nav, which is the navigation bar, and this is the major element that is doing the work of the navigation bar. But just for us to understand that in this case we are not using on other list to maybe make a list of item or anything, but we are using it to specify our navigation bar. Another thing is, maybe you come out of your header, another semantic tag is the main tag, which, okay, maybe I'm done with my header and this main is now the core section or the core body of my page. And in there, you can now say, okay, I want to divide the body into different sections so that I will not just have everything jam-packed together or everything just mixed up together. So I want to divide each of my main or which the main contents into different sections. So you can do that using another tag called section. So this section 2 is just a way of encamping your HTML elements inside a container. So this section is like, okay, this section is for maybe the feature section, this section is for the blog section, this section is for the hero section, this section is for the call to action section. So just a way of dividing your HTML elements into components. So let's say at this in this section is has to do with maybe short information about the company that maybe you are designing the website for, and you just use Lorem for this. So like that, you know that this is one section like that. This is a particular section, and from there you can decide, okay, I want to go to another section. So this is another session. So instead of us to have heading paragraph, and we are not sure of where the breakpoints are. So it's not, so this session just give us a chance for us to break our page into smaller units. So let's say at this session I want to possibly define the portfolio. Let's say this, let's just make this short info about our projects. So definitely you know that this session will be like a write-up where you'll be writing some things about the project. So that's why you're going to say, okay, this session I'm going now, I am going to be specifying it as an article. So that's another semantic element in action. So we have seen header, we have seen navigation, we have seen main, we have seen session, and we have seen article now. So it's just okay, this part is a write-up that I want the user to read as an article. So now in this section, so if you save now, the article does not really display anything, like it's not a special tag or anything, just a semantic tag that's used to enclose your. So okay, yeah, okay, I supposed to put this in here, and so this is our article, and in the article I want to specify the heading, and maybe this is project 1, and the paragraph, maybe some random text of 4040. So if I save, see that the article doesn't really have any special, but when you are reading your code, you understand better that okay, this is an article, and maybe when the search engine too is looking through your website, okay, you understand this is an article, and make write recommendation to anybody that need this article, and they are using the search engine. So we also have other semantic tags like aside. So maybe you are looking at putting a sidebar, so aside, and you can just call this maybe your recent post or recent comments, recent posts or recent comments, and you can just also make this an unordered list. You can see now that we can, if you just see an unordered list on your page, it will not get you worried that okay, which was this doing, was this doing. Once you look at the parent, okay, this one is the another list for their side. When you look at the parent for this other another list that we use, you know, okay, this another list for nav, you can see the importance of semantic tags. So this is going to be our a, let's say a, so this is going to be post 1. We have to deal with this before. Let's just duplicate post 1, post 2, post 3, and from there we can say okay, that marks the end of course the aside will not do anything. If you want to put it aside, you use CSS, which you are going to be getting to later, but for now let's just still leave it there like that. So but just I believe you understand the concept of what semantic tags are doing, just to put your website into context and put them into different units. And lastly, you can now define your, okay, at the end of my main, you have it that you have your main, and then you have your filter. So you can then consider this image as, okay, this part is my header, and this other part, other section is my main body, and this last part is the filter. Then now you can then see, okay, this is my filter now. Is my filter where you specify it as a paragraph, where you specify it as a paragraph, and where you specify it as a paragraph. I can just say copy 2023. Alright. Alright, reserved. Alright, reserved. So, and that is the filter. So now the non-semantic, sharply now, the non-semantic elements, we have just two of them, and that is the div and span. The div and span. So this one does not really has any specific name of what they are doing, just a container. So anytime you want to enclose some key elements into, you want to embed them together, you want to close them together inside one particular element or tag, then you should use div. Another alternative is you can also use span. The difference between the span and div is that span is an inline element while div is a block element. That means that if I define another div under this, if I define another div under this, it's going to come to the next line. But if I define another span here, if I define another span here, it's going to occupy the same line. So let me say this is, let me say just div1. Let me just call this div1, and let me call this div2, which is a non-semantic element, just a parent. And then you can see that div1 and div2 are on different line. But for span, if I call this span 1 and I then make this span 2, it's going to occupy the same line because it's an inline element. You can see span, it's an inline element. So that's that about semantic and non-semantic elements. The two non-semantic elements is just div and span, and semantic elements are just like parents that we use to enclose our HTML elements based on the function that they are serving.